All right. Well, with that, I think I'll just get things started and call this meeting to order. I think everybody who's here, there's no one new, so we'll just skip the welcome and introductions. I would entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Make that
So
motion.
moved.
And a second.
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 All right.
Third.
All those in favor say
I'm gonna
aye.
say, sorry, so James, sorry, Jim, you made the motion and Brad, you seconded it. Does that sound good?
That's good.
Affirmative.
Excellent.
So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Any abstentions? All right. So the first item in our vote, the first voting item that we have is our approval of the A&D committee recommendations for property disposal. And so I'm going to let Joe tell us what we have here, and then I will entertain a motion.
Sure. So we had 5 properties that the A&D committee voted to recommend in the September and August auctions. 2 of these are contingent on deed restrictions, which I've been working with Indiana Title and Leslie on getting set up. And then one of those is contingent on the acquisition of an adjacent lot. So I don't know if you want me to list them all out.
I think it's pretty well noted there in the agenda.
I do have a question. What do you mean by if not following zoning code?
If the person was to acquire the property from us and they start like breaking zoning code and putting things that aren't allowed to go on the lot on, then we would have like the legal recourse to take it back.
Okay.
Is there a reason that we're concerned about this buyer? Because, you know, any of our buyers could break zoning code.
Yeah, right.
So
I don't think it's something that's for that buyer specifically, but if we're going to start putting deed restrictions on our lots in general, then it's something that we'd like to be able to take property back for, I think.
okay.
If I
So is
remember
this-
correctly, this was a, somebody wanted to put a trailer on this property, so it was housing code. It was that it had to be 24 feet wide and it had to have a permanent foundation.
Yeah, that is zoning code.
Yep.
All right, so there was some question about we want to go back out to the property in maybe a year and make sure that they're not trashing it.
So 2412, they actually wanted to do the garden. 1913, it's also written into the deed restriction on 1913. But 1913 is the one with the trailer.
Oh,
But the contingency that we wrote in at the A&D meeting with 1913 was just that Torres provide us with costs that show like an itemized bill under $10,000. Because we were concerned that her cost would be above 10,000. So that's something I'm working on her to figure out right now.
So I think I mean, globally speaking, we're going to be seeing more of this with our property dispositions. We're going to see more kinds of, things written into the deed, some contingencies that enable us to act if the buyer doesn't follow through on their commitments. Is that pretty much correct?
Yeah, just globally. Just to kind of limit our liability and allow us to at least have the threat of retaking property back if people start to trash it and stuff.
Great. Well, do we want to do a motion to approve all 5 of the properties, or do we want to go through them individually?
hmm.
The A&D committee's already done that, right?
The committee has made a recommendation. And so now it's for the board to vote to actually dispose of the properties. And we can do that as a group for all 5, or we can do that individually. I just need a motion. So the A&D committee has recommended that we dispose of these 5 properties with the contingencies listed.
I move that we adopt the A&D committee's recommendations as to the property transfers.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Right. So I'm actually gonna move the voting item B back because Annette said she's running a few minutes late, and I would like for her to be here whenever we discuss her appointment as treasurer to the board. And so we'll just move into the items of general discussion and then come back to voting item B when Annette is in attendance. So the acquisition and disposition committee was quite busy this week, and I guess if you look in the box folder, there's a fair bit of information. There's a couple things that I want to point out specifically, but I will let Nate take the mic here and tell us what's going on.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Yeah, as you know, we've been working to try to figure out our process related to the houses that we've received from the county, and to get to something concrete, we've had meetings with different land banks. We've had multiple meetings as an A&D committee. Let's see here. Yeah. Multiple meetings with the A&D committee, kind of go through this process and ask questions, answer questions. One of the inputs that, not this one that John has up, but another one, Brad took some time to kind of break down, thank you, John, break down our process from start to end. And this is kind of a problem, a logic tree, decision tree that it's something that the A&D committee is going to be working on between now and hopefully the next meeting. But this takes from the very beginning, even prior to actually acquiring property, kind of parameters for interest in a property, and then taking it through three different passes, depending on if we can get it into somebody's hands on the first pass. If not, then there's a second pass. If there's not the second pass, then a third pass. What I wanted to just quickly point out is back to the other document, John. What I'm calling our first pass, just so everybody knows where we are with these properties specifically. I've mentioned this before. They're going through quite a title action. We have done what we call a level 1 assessment, just a basic analysis of each property. Melanie has offered to, through some of her connections with the MLS board, try to get a group of realtors to help us with do volunteer BPOs, which would be how we set a minimum price for each house. We're going to meet with the MLS board on Monday. Or it's not the MLS board, it's the MEIAR board. But a board of realtors, a group of realtors.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? MEIAR?
MEIAR. Melanie, can you help me out there? I think.
Yes, it's the board of directors for MEIAR. the Mid-Eastern Indiana Association of Realtors.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Melanie. So we're gonna meet with them on Monday. In the idea that Melanie suggests is that we get a group of volunteer realtors to help us do these BPOs on the houses that we get. So that'll be the minimum price. Here in the next week, we're gonna be putting all our properties up on our website with pictures, and we're gonna make that level 1 assessment public. And then we're going to actually invite people through our website to set up a site visit. So the plan is over the course of November that all the people that are calling and asking about these houses, we're going to call them back and we're going to tell them, hey, go on our website and let's set up a visit. We're going to go out to the house. We're going to make 2 things clear. One, that if anybody wants to bid on the property, they have to have done a site visit, and they also have to have done a renovation spec, some kind of specification that shows that they know what they're getting into. Then in December, we're going to actually put the houses up on auction. So we'll have minimum price, we'll have people that are going out to visit, and then people are going to make bids. And that'll include the renovation spec. And then the normal kind of vetting questions that we have in addition to that. And then hopefully we'll have some bids and be able to entertain those in our January 8th A&D committee meeting. So that's our first pass. That's what we're hoping for with what we got here. And then we would move into closing process. And as Joe mentioned, we've been doing some work trying to figure out how we can create purchasing agreements, deeds with some kind of restriction, so we have recourse if folks don't comply. So that's the first pass, assuming that we get, if everything's sold, and then that's great, but likely we won't, and so we'll have to figure out the second pass, which might mean investing a little bit more money and making some strategic improvements. It might mean doing some additional promotion. It might mean spending some money on doing some specifications ourselves.
So if I may, that's where the decision tree is quite interesting, because it lays out what'll happen in the case that there's no interest. And basically what happens is that the land bank will take various actions to make the property more marketable. So our goal is to get rid of the property kind of as is. And then what Brad has laid out for us is a variety of actions that we could take in order to make the property a little bit more marketable. And then if it doesn't end up selling even after those actions, the land bank will just, we'll seal it up and bank it. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that was just bring everybody up to speed. We have finally kind of nailed down a process, at least a first pass, we're calling it. One other thing I wanted to mention is that in the A&D committee meeting, we kind of had the blessing from the A&D committee to learn what we need to learn, not be so concerned with following a systematic process, even being afraid to spend some dollars. For example, next week I'm going to be going out with an architect, and we're going to be doing a couple renovation specs. It could be that these houses in the future, these kinds of houses, we wouldn't do a renovation spec, but we are going to do them just because I want to learn what that process entails. Yeah, there are also houses that potentially Pathstone through their HARP program is interested in. But so yeah, we have this process, but we're also, our goal here is to learn how to do this more than anything. And so we're taking this process, assuming this process as a bit of a pilot goal of learning. So are there any questions about that?
Could you help me a little bit with Nate with item 8? Could you bring that back up?
I got it.
Do you have it, John? Thanks.
Mhm.
That's the item I think you're going to have the most challenges.
Yes.
But I mean, when somebody buys these structures, do you give them 90 days to complete the work, 6 months? They're all going to be in various degree of need. Is there some expectation that they have to complete the work in a certain number of days? If we get too many structures, somebody's going to be really busy going back and inspecting every 60 days.
Yeah.
I mean, I like what we have here, but
Mhm.
to some degree, but I don't know how you manage that.
Mhm.
Brad, did you want to interject something there?
Yeah, I think that Jim lays out a good point about the condition and the varied assessment conditions that are going to happen from these properties, right? Property is going to need different things, and that's going to take different time. So how I would imagine this kind of working itself out is that between the purchaser and the seller, they would negotiate the amount of time the work takes to get completed. And then we would just base a cyclical inspection or update based in that. There's no reason to do 60 days if it's only going to take 90 days to get it done, right?
Mhm.
If it's going to take 3 years to get the property done, maybe 60 days is still too much. Maybe we need to put that out to every 90 or 180. I don't know.
Mhm.
But I think, the amount of work is going to determine the amount of time. And if we can, during the sale, during the transfer, come to an agreement on the amount of time, then that'll help us lay out, I think, a schedule, which isn't going to be the same for every property, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, I also think that an important thing to remember is that whenever people are bidding on these properties, they're going to have to show that they have a plan for, rehabilitating it, and so we'll have their bid information that will kind of specify how long the redevelopment process is going to take. And my understanding is that the PPS system allows us to set reminders based on the proposed schedule that the bidder has submitted. And in addition to that, the agreement that the land bank has worked out prior to the closing process. So I would imagine that each property will have a unique scope of work in it, a unique timeline in it, and that the PPS system will alert the property inspectors as to when they need to go out and check on things. If it gets too complex to do on an individualized basis, then we just send someone out every 60 days. And when they're out there, they're looking at what the person has promised to do and giving us updates. But, just more generally, if we were to think about what the advantage of the land bank is over other systems for dealing with delinquent properties, this is it, right? This is what we have to assure that properties are reused in such a way that is beneficial to the community. These are our mechanisms for making sure that the property that we dispose of doesn't end up back on the tax roll. If it comes to it, then we will take the property again if a buyer has failed to follow through on the actions that they've agreed to. So I think it is important that we get this right.
So let me ask one more question. That this is all predicated upon the way this is written, that the structure does not meet health codes, municipality health codes and so forth, and cannot be occupied. And some of these structures can be occupied, I would assume. They just need a little bit of love. In this case, the way this is written, when you get down to the bottom line, which is C of O, that suggests this is written around those that can't be occupied. At the end of the day, somebody has to give you a C of O. Is that correct?
Yeah, this language is from the Cuyahoga Land Bank, their process. These are really rough structures. I don't know enough to say whether they're certified or not, but I imagine that we will need some kind of clearance for folks to be moving into these places.
And if they're not occupiable, that's probably not a word. If you can't occupy them, wouldn't somebody within the city's inspectors have stapled some type of notice on the building?
Only if
Unfortunately.
only if it's been reported. It's
Okay.
a, it's a reactionary system.
Got it.
We could say that line is fine, and then if you don't need permits, it's just an inapplicable process, right? It's just like me and you are going to transfer a home that's totally habitable. At that point, we don't really, I think there should be some flexibility, I guess, with the staff to make sure that they know it, the roof's caved in, you're not moving into this until this passes an inspection from the building commissioner, right? We're not sealing this deal until then. We'll seal this deal because heck, I could put on some paint in this place and live here. You know what I mean? Those are wild examples.
Yeah.
And I think that as we do this, we'll all understand it better. And I think, when capable people come to these houses, they'll speak the language of knowing how to do it.
Yeah, and I think, Brad, I'm looking here, it's probably answered in item number 2. Item number 2 is going to answer those questions. Yeah. If you go through that analysis and you go, nobody can move in this building, then we know they're going to go all the way through C of O. If all those systems are in place, it just needs some updates. It's a different pathway. Okay. I think I kind of got it.
Yeah.
I do have a question for you, Brad. Would it make sense for us to ask, so who is it that makes it so that you're not allowed to occupy a property? Is that the building commissioner's office?
It'd be one of the code inspectors, like your violation of health building code.
So would we want to bring one of those folks out to the buildings that we acquire so that they can assess whether or not it's habitable?
They're not going to do that unless you're reporting it as a violation or you've purchased a permit from the building commissioner. The only inspections that the city's building inspection commissioners do is for code compliance, like someone reported you for weeds, broken windows, or you got an HVAC permit. Now you need to clear out the permit by getting the roughed in and the finished inspection. Does that make sense?
It does.
It's really compliance only, and it's not like a service in which you would have someone do to your house before you sell it or before you buy it.
The reason that I was asking that question is because I think it would be problematic if we had people moving into houses that were not habitable. And it would
absolutely
be more
right.
problematic if we had to kick people out of housing that they had just moved into because it's determined that it's not habitable. Maybe within this process, we need to have just a step that either deems the property habitable or not. And that's part of and I think that this kind of gets at what Jim is saying, that level 2 assessment, or level 1 assessment, maybe we could just put something in there about, in some way or another, deeming the property something that someone can move into, or is it a property that you're going to have to live elsewhere while you rehab it?
So I am a trained housing quality standards inspector. It's the standard that public housing agencies use. I could provide the staff with a kind of a simple inspection checklist that would be just housing quality. And then what we do is we would use it to start off, maybe along with the assessment of the actual structure and like the useful life of the things that exist there. And then if it's anything else, like if it's any other authority, like the health department and or the building commissioner, then we would lean on their violation and their inspection and tag process, because it would more than likely be more serious than what an HQS inspection would reveal. And they have the authority to allow the occupancy or not at the end of the day. So if they've already tagged the building, we know what process that is. If there's no tag on the building and it wouldn't be a building you'd normally call in for a tag, then maybe we could lean on HQS inspections.
So that might be something that would go into the level 1 assessment.
Yeah.
And I think that I really appreciate what Jim's bringing up, because it could really get ugly if people are living in properties that have the roof caved in, or if we're coming back and then inspectors saying you can't live here and we're having to kick families out. So we just want to take care of that at the beginning. And then when we market the property, when it goes to auction, it needs to indicate whether the property is habitable or not.
Okay, that's helpful. One question, maybe this is kind of a stupid question, but how likely, like, for example, there's one house that we have that the roof is caving in. And there's a guy that we've been talking to that says, I would love to just move in there, and I would, the first thing I would do would be to reinforce that roof, covered up from the outside so that's not, being, it's not notable from anybody from the outside. I mean, how likely is it that somebody might get, move into a place like this and then get forced out through the city mechanisms of quality control? I don't know if my question's clear.
Yeah, no, I mean, how likely is it that the building inspector comes by and says, and puts up a tag after we've sold the house to the person? Well, I mean, I think that's why we need to be a little bit, maybe err on the side of caution when it comes to indicating the properties are habitable.
I wouldn't use that word, and I wouldn't, because it's not our jurisdiction to code comply. What we should do is just make sure, like, once we do the assessment, we should identify the things that we think are going to need permits. Like, if you're going to do electrical work, we're going to just call that electrical permit. I'm not going to measure how much electrical run you're going to do to see if it's like up to code. I'm just going to say, hey, I think you need electrical permit for that because there's an update to the box that's going to be needed, or we're going to have to need a new heating unit for the furnace. We're not doing runs, but I'm not doing any measurements, but I'm going to say, go get an HVAC permit so we know it was done right. You don't need a building permit to actually re-roof the structure unless you re-roof over 20% of the structure. However, we could say, hey man, if you're going to fix that hole, we'd really like to see you get a building permit. You see what I'm saying? We can say we would like you to get these permits in the transaction as part of the deal, and that would engage that they would go pay for the permit. A professional would have to do it, a licensed professional. We know that a licensed professional has to pull the permit. They'd have to pay for the permit, and then they would get the inspections, and that would give us a better conscience and clearance.
So that would be something you include, you said, right, in the purchasing agreement, the deed, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Nate, I would almost put that way up front in when you put it out for sale, say this property needs these, it's going to need to be inspected. You're going to need to pull permits for these specific things, because like when you're talking about this guy that wants to live in a house that has a roof that's, somewhat caving in, he's probably not thinking he's going to have to pull a permit for the roof, hire a contractor. That's a whole other cost structure. So that might price him out. So it'd be best to know ahead of time that that's what our expectation is.
Yeah. And legally, we have to tell people about the legal violations to the property. So if it's got a health code violation, or it actually does have a tag from the building commissioner, we have to tell potential purchasers that that's the condition of the property. The legal is because it's a legal condition as well. It's under like an administrative judicial process.
So I think that'll go ahead. Excuse me.
Brad, let me take you back to your answer to the question about code compliance. You said they have to be called to come out
or get a permit.
Or get a permit. So wouldn't part of this process, because I don't want us to end up with some implied liability here that it's occupiable. Again, I'm using a word that probably doesn't exist, but should there be some item on here that says, look, you're going to buy this structure, but we would suggest, I don't know, you guys pick the word, that you contact whatever office is the appropriate office in the city to provide that inspection to make sure it's occupiable.
I mean,
Beat up
that,
on that. Yeah.
you know, that would be part of the asking them to get the permit. 'Cause
Okay, that would be part of the permit.
You see
Okay,
what I'm saying? They're
Yeah.
gonna, for us to close it out, we're gonna want to see the inspection, and for the code enforcers, they're gonna want to be following up on a permit. And that's all gonna be in our world, you know, contractor initiated. So from the land
Got it.
bank's point of view, we're gonna say, hey, you need to get a building permit or whatever the permit is, and you need to contact the proper authorities, and you need to set the inspections. And then you need to provide us that information. You can get a receipt for the permit. You don't even have to give me the permit. You can get a receipt for it, shows you paid for it, and you can get a slip that says final inspection passed, whoever did it. And as long as we get those, that should be fine as far as like, you know, minimum housing code.
Yeah. And
So-
go ahead, Melanie.
My question was, when they're bidding on these properties, don't they have to present their plan for this property? And shouldn't it include those things up front? And provide the proof that they have the funds to complete the project
They should.
Yes.
process?
In
I
Yeah.
think
theory,
what
yes.
we can do as the land bank is provide more information on the auction when we're auctioning the properties about what steps are going to need to be taken. Right. So if we're expecting that you're going to have to pull a permit to fix the HVAC, that should be like what I notice is that item number 5 in our list just says properties will go up on the auction in, you know, and there should be some reference to all of the steps that were taken before, like the site visits, the BPO, the level 1 assessment. The information from that should be contained whenever on the auction site for each of the properties, right? So we're not just going to say this property, we're going to set a minimum bid and then send it out, and people, if they meet that minimum bid, they're going to get the property. It's that they have to have a plan to fix the things that need to be fixed, that we've identified that need to be fixed, to pull the permits that are required to be pulled. And we need to let the bidders know that that's the process that they're going to have to take if they want to win the auction. Does that make sense? So I think that that's really the crucial point, like the crucial moment. That's where we share with potential bidders what's going to be required to win an auction and to have the property. Does that address your issue, Melanie?
Well, my concern was if we're going to auction these off and a person, you know, says, well, this is my dream, I think I can do this, and they don't really have any idea, wouldn't they be required to have a plan that makes sense and consult with a contractor or someone that knows the steps already?
So what I hear
Yeah,
you saying is that you think it's more the bidder's responsibility to flesh out a plan that will make the property
Right, and
sellable. And
have to, their deadlines, their timeline of when certain things would be done. And then, I mean, certainly they wouldn't want to occupy. I mean, I'm sure there are people that would want to occupy a property that's not habitable, but I
I
guess,
think that the question here for the
So,
board is, is this something that the land bank wants to more so take on in terms of giving an overall set of requirements in the auctions, or is this something that we are going to want from our bidders, and we just ask the bidder for a detailed process? And I think that that's an important question.
Just 1 minute though, that we're talking about kind of 2 different ends of this transaction. One is a proposal. I propose to take on your house, buy it, do all these things, right? I lay out a scope of work. I'm going to follow your scope of work, and I've got the money for the scope, and I show you the financials, right? That's our kind of vetting process. I did it to a house down the street. You know, I've got a portfolio, whatever it is, right? That's kind of our vetting process in the bidding. what the permits and and what we're talking about here about who's going to make sure the work's being done is the follow-up on that compliance to make sure that we just didn't sell a house over to someone who's, you know, not making the building compliant and not bringing it to the code and, you know, not really improving the situation, which is what we really want to do out of this real estate.
And I think that the
those are
issue,
but you're not going to come, what I'm saying, John, you're not going to come to the bid auction with permits.
Right.
You're
But you'll
not, you're doing that on the other end.
but
that-
you might come to the auction knowing that permits are going to need to be pulled. And the question is, are we asking the buyer to know that they're going to have to pull permits? Or are we going to
Yeah.
list on the auction site, these permits are going to need to be pulled and it needs to be part of your scope of work that you submit as part of your bid on the property?
There's a language of knowing for people who do this work. And if I describe the type of work that needs to be done, and there would be obvious permit requirements in there, the folks that have that kind of capacity and that kind of experience are already going to know that. And they're already going to be talking that way. And that's going to be part of your filtering system.
And the other thing,
Because not just anyone can pull a permit.
what if we miss a permit that's required and they never get it? And then, I mean, so you're gonna have to have some open-ended language, I think. Well, if you're
Heather, it
gonna-
looks like you have you wanted to weigh in here.
Yeah, I just don't think we have anything, if we don't tell them ahead of time, we're not gonna have an idea of what to compare the bids to. Like as the A&D committee, we could get 5 different bids from people and they'd say 5 completely different things. But if we know that this is what the property needs, we have something to compare those bids against.
That's a good perspective because, I mean, thinking about it in terms of our process, we're going to spend hours in the A&D committee meeting arguing. We have a bid for $15,000 where the person has said X, Y, and Z, and a bid for $5,000 where the person has said, you know, and we're going to have to parse whether these things are realistic on the
But
back end instead of knowing up front, this is going to need a roof, this is going to need HVAC, this is going to need, and telling our bidders that.
I don't think I'm saying don't tell them the scope of work, because I don't know what we would be providing them. We already talked about providing folks with the scope of work that's going to be needed. My guess would be the bid is based on the scope of work. I'm saying that if you start identifying that within upfront, like what's going to need permits and what's not going to be permits, you know, it's again not our judgment to make. What we can do is just say we require these kind of things, and when people use the language, you're going to recognize it. You know,
Well,
when someone
think
goes to repair your roof and they're using the right language and terminology of the structure, and then someone comes in and just says wood and beam, you know, and doesn't really know what they're talking about, it gives me a bit of a surety about capacity on one end. It really does.
I really hope, Brad, that we get those people. But what
No,
I think we're
absolutely.
gonna end up with are folks that want to live in a house with a crushed in roof and fix it while they live there. And we're gonna have to figure out which of 3 people that want to live in an abandoned house.
We
the
don't have to
capacity-
sell that property to them. We're not mandated to transfer properties just because people bid on them.
I hear you.
So I'm not worried about rejecting people because they lack capacity or the ability to actually carry through the project. That's got to be part of the
I'm
vetting
not saying
process.
those people lack capacity. I'm just saying, how do we judge which one?
Yeah, and I think that this is like, this is actually something that we need to come to an agreement on in the A&D committee, because what Nate said from the beginning is that they're going to be learning how to do this as they're doing it. Now that could get us into trouble. If we let someone move into a house that is not habitable and something happens, or then further down the line, we have to kick them out of that house, that's going to be a real mess. So our job as the board and our job as the A&D committee, is to make sure that we're providing Nate with the guidance that he needs so that he can learn from this process without getting us into a bad situation. And so I would suggest that we need to maybe have another meeting where we talk about this question of whether or when someone is able to move into a property that we're selling, and also what kind of information we're going to provide upfront, and what the bids need to look like when they're coming in. Because I just don't want to get into a situation where we're doing these compliance inspections and kicking people out of housing. That's not the role that we want to be in. Is that something we can do in our next A&D committee meeting?
Yes.
All right. This is really useful discussion, and I want to thank the A&D committee for getting this process this far. And I want to thank Brad in particular for that decision tree. That's, I think, one of the most useful documents that's been produced, for thinking about our process. I would suggest anyone who wants to understand what the land bank does with property, that they take a look at that decision tree. It might be something that we could even use as like an infographic for, describing what the land bank does with property. All right, for the sake of time, I'm gonna move forward. Nate, you wanted to talk about 512 East Centennial.
Oh, just an update. We did acquire one tax certificate. For one specific person, there's an agreement. We're gonna run it through the legal process, and just so everybody knows.
So Nate, did we get that at the deed sale?
Yes, at the tax sale.
Awesome, thank you.
The
Yep.
A sale,
Not the deed sale.
the A sale.
Just the regular tax sale, got it.
And then C on the agenda there, Nate, I don't know if you want to take that.
One sec here, my disappeared. Sorry. Well, I mean, I think I think we started answering this question or dealing with this question during this meeting. I think the thought was in the next A&D meeting, we could parse this out even more so. I mean, the question I had in mind was, we do have procedures, some A&D committee procedures, and just taking this and comparing it with our procedures, what needs to be amended was a question, because that language came up in our A&D meeting and it wasn't clear to me what that meant. But I think more than anything, the next A&D meeting, it would be spend some time trying to parse this out even more. So that was what that question was for the A&D meeting.
All right.
Shall we?
Sure. Well, now that Annette is here, I think we can actually go back to our voting item number B. Or Annette, we've discussed appointing you as the treasurer for the board. I think I would need a motion from someone other than me to appoint Annette.
Move to approve.
Can I get a second? Okay. And then we'll do a little bit of discussion here. Does anybody want to talk about the treasurer role? Anything? Okay. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed, say
Aye.
nay. Any abstentions? All right, and Annette has been into the office and met with our.
Thank you,
accountants.
Annette.
Yeah. And she and Nate have worked on that process, and I think that she's up to speed. So thank you very much for what you've done so far, and thank you for your willingness to serve.
You're
All right.
welcome. When you don't come to a board meeting, that's what happens.
That's right.
Thank you, Annette.
And thanks, Melanie, for, you know, all the work that you did to get us to this point. So we may be calling on
Absolutely.
you.
Maybe we should go ahead. Melanie?
I'm here, so don't put me in the bus. And I do try to answer my phone. If I can't answer, I will call you back. Happy to help.
Well, I think we should initiate a process by which whenever someone steps down from one of these roles that requires a lot of work, maybe we should just give them a little hand. So let's give Melanie a hand for taking us through the last 18 months.
Melanie.
Thank you, Melanie. All right, Programs Committee. It looks like Nate, you're up to talk about scenarios for side lot program.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the sake of time, I don't think it's that important that we go through this. I think John, Brad, and I had a good conversation about what a potential side lot program with the building commissioner could look like. That's something that he's approached me about, which I really appreciate, but it's something that comes with a lot of liability if we would take on. So anyways, the conversation more than anything was about, I think, how to approach it from a monetary perspective, how we're not taking on something that's going to be a financial burden to us, and a little bit of strategy about who to approach in the county if we're going to try to create some kind of coordinated effort. I have on my to-do list to get in touch with folks that I've had some interaction with at the county, take that back to the building commissioner, and then see where it goes from there. But more than anything, we want to make sure that we have financial mitigation if we take on something that would be beneficial to the city with regards to their demo lots and the mowing that they take on. Are there any questions, Brad or John? Do you want to speak to that? But I think for time we don't have to get into the weeds here.
All right, so moving on with our agenda here. Let's see, fundraising and development. I mean, I think in the agenda you can see our progress here. I did want to ask Nate about the CenterPoint Energy follow-up. And maybe this might be a moment to just bring Heather back into the conversation, because she initially created the contact with, what's the guy's name?
Tom Moore.
Tom Moore. Yeah, and I think he's back in charge of our area. So I just wanted to point that out. I know that Nate, you're doing some follow-up. It might make sense to loop Heather in.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
A quick question. Nate, is the city funds, or Williams, West, Phillips, whoever can answer it, the city funds are MRC funded through them? Is that what you mean by city funds?
There are some are MRC and some of them are, what I understand, just they're kind of labeled as city funds, but there's a distinction. There's two different sources, as I understand it, coming from the city, within the city.
Not to be confused with city council. So it's
No,
some funds. Go ahead.
I think some of them are edit funds, are they? I mean, if that's the only funds I can imagine we would have. If it's not MRC, then it would have to be edit. Because we don't have CDBG, we don't have money from city council.
Well, I think that we have that tax in lieu of, or payment in lieu of taxes agreement with the city.
Okay.
I think the edit funds are
Pilot funds.
Yeah, the pilot funds, that's it. So the edit funds are from our agreement for the 20 properties that we got through the MRC about 2 years ago. And then the pilot is a 5-year contract that began, I think, in 2018, and that's gonna end soon. And those are our two sources of funding from the city. So both of them are set to expire relatively soon.
So,
Go ahead, Marta.
so the agreement, it was my understanding that was with the MRC. And so we're talking about MRC funds. The edit funds come at the direction of the mayor. So do you know which is which?
I'm not entirely sure, Marta, that we currently have edit funds.
No, I don't think we do. Yeah,
Okay.
we don't have it.
So we are gonna, I am meeting with an individual in the city to have a preliminary discussion about what it would take for us to quote unquote apply for edit funds.
Okay,
So that's gonna happen here at the end of October. And then Nate and I are also going to meet with John Disher, and I cannot remember the name of the other individual. I think it was Brian or Brad, and the IU Foundation to talk about foundation funding there through the hospital.
Okay.
So that's going to happen beginning of November.
okay.
Thank you very much. And I guess, does that cover our new strategies?
We've talked about trying to reconnect with banks, smaller funds. I think we've tried to go for the big fish, and I think while we continue to try to get the big fish, there's a lot of little fishes that we can bring in, and it can add up quickly. So there's a bunch of different ideas. We've talked about doing potentially a end of the year or beginning of the year fundraiser. I mean, I think the challenge from the committee was that we're more creative, and or in the A&D committee, the next point you can see is talking about meeting once a month, because we feel like that's something that can be beneficial. There's just that needs to be always kind of on the table from month to month is fundraising. So you might see some more creative things that the land bank are doing with regards to financing.
Fish fry, is that our next move?
It could be a fish fry.
All right. So that takes us into item 8, the public outreach and marketing and communications, and there is some business here. So Nate, do you want to take us away on item 8?
Yes, so Brad and Jason and I talked, met as a committee. We had originally drafted up kind of our ideal idea for a media person, communications person. It basically encompassed 3 things. One would be, week to week social media management. 2, storytelling, going out into the community and getting all kinds of positive stories. Some stories perhaps that might point to the problem. We have a long list of different ideas that we could start to create stories around. And then the other is there's some audio visual inputs that I've thought would be really helpful. One be kind of an explainer video. We have these meetings where I'm introducing myself, introducing the land bank, and something that's 2 to 3 minutes that could just really explain very well who we are, what we do, and maybe a few examples. That's something that I've been chewing on for some months. Anyways, the idea originally was to have that all balled up in one position. We've not been able to source that out through Ball State, which I thought would be the best option. Get an intern from the journalism department. That's not to no avail. Anyways, we've kind of come up with a strategy for outsourcing it between 3 different folks. One, if you want to look in the as I understood it, Brad and Jason, that this wasn't something that we had to get approved because the monetary value has already been
Set aside, yeah.
established. This is just more sharing with the board what our plan is. One is to use Farmhouse again to do that week-to-week social media management. Two is to hire somebody locally, kind of a consultant to do some storytelling for us. And then for some of the audiovisual things that we've identified, we need having Orange Wave Media do that for us. They have an office here in Mad Jack's. So I've talked to all these folks. You can see the Farmhouse quote and the Orange Wave quote in the box if you want to look at it. But that's kind of our
And
strategy.
just to be clear, this isn't all, we're gonna do all three and not just, this isn't. these
Yeah, the
aren't
plan is to
competing
do all
folks. Yeah.
three. Yeah.
All right, good work in the public outreach committee, and I look forward to us having more of a presence in
Yeah,
terms
we
of,
need to improve that. Brad and Jason, we can meet again if you'd like to dig into this before I just start signing contracts, but
Yeah, that'd be good. Let's meet again and
okay.
review the quotes and come up with a
Okay.
game plan.
Yep.
all right. Number 9, governance committee, Marta, and all, it looks like Nate's gonna report out on our mowing.
Yeah, we had a good conversation. We combined the governance committee and the finance insurance committee into one committee meeting. Because they were both dealing with the question that I brought up about bringing mowing in-house. Upon doing the cost analysis, it was pretty clear that bringing it in-house is not the best decision. Even if we grew to 105 lots, economically, it doesn't make sense. So that was pretty easy to answer, but the exercise served its purpose. And there is a cost analysis in the box if you want to see it.
Thank you. And then governmental relations. Nate, anything?
Yeah, just real quick, yeah, we're planning, we're hoping to make another ask to the county for properties. Either probably deeds is what we're going to be asking for, but it could be a mix. I'm not sure with certificates, deeds. But the question we put to the committee was about time frame, considering that we have already received a number of properties from the county, because their first question will be, well, what did you do with what we already gave you? And so we talked through, okay, what is it that we're going to be able to show if we approach them in late January, early February? And so that first document, that first pass that we spent a long time talking about is kind of what some of the things that we'll be able to show to the county if we go in February, say, well, this is what we have done. You know, it's not people living in houses and things being remodeled yet. But we've put a lot of time and effort into getting to this far. And we feel like that will be enough for them to say, okay, they're working. I think we can hopefully award them some more properties.
Excellent work. And I think that our governmental relations committee, it might be good through staff, through Nate, to keep up to date with Heather's work in the mayor's office. If, you know, when that committee is meeting.
Yeah.
I don't know if, and Heather, I don't know if there's any help that the governmental relations committee can give you as you're pursuing those conversations with the city, with the mayor's office. Pardon?
Oh, I say I definitely will let you know. I'm just
Okay,
starting
great.
off with a very casual beer. So
Oh,
we'll see how that goes first.
good. That's real Muncie decision making. Love it. All right. Executive committee did not meet. We need to meet. And one of the things that Nate has been hounding us about in a very productive way is thinking about restructuring our committees. And I think that this discussion about the governmental relations and the fundraising, like there's quite a bit of overlap between what the different committees do. And so we want to think about ways of kind of doing things more efficiently. And yeah, so the executive committee will meet between this month and next.
Okay.
All right. Anything else that's a privilege of the floor? Anything that we need to know about? Anything that is upcoming? We did this meeting in 1 hour and 1 minute, which is very impressive given that we were on item A or item number 2 until 9:45. So I'd like to congratulate everybody here. All right, I will see you in a month, if not before.
Motion to adjourn.
There we go.
Don't forget the
Right.
Ball State Parade tomorrow downtown to
Hooray.
campus. Homecoming
Chirp, chirp.
game. Chirp, chirp. Go
Chirp, chirp.
Cards. Have a good weekend,
Bye.
folks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.